All right, hey folks, so we're just going to go ahead and go into this. Today's date, November 23rd, 2019, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most Will Buchanan. On how the Frack We Got Here, we do try to take the events and things of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is an adult podcast, which means that adult language may be used and things of a graphic nature may be shown, so viewer discretion is advised. Now that we got that out the way, kind of been a rough week. You know, we're all looking forward to Turkey Day, unless you're the turkey, or unless you're vegan. So we're trying to actually get through it, and let's be honest, usually gets to President Dumpster Fire, President Cheeto, as my friend Vaughn says, President Baby Hands. You know him, you love him. He's not the most, he's pretty much the most unfit president since The Simpsons. But Trump, who is facing the worst time in his, I would say in his hopefully very short political career, where he's facing impeachment. And for pretty much for the simple fact of the matter, he says he welcomes it. Well, there's a slight problem with that. It's called facts.
Daring House Democrats to impeach him and declaring he welcomes a Senate trial, a process that could theoretically get underway by Christmas. Now, we've now heard and seen 12 witnesses testifying publicly at 7 hearings over 5 days. And while everyone is sorting through the testimony, we should note that the most damning evidence came straight from the horses' mouths. Fact: President Trump asked the Ukrainian president to investigate the Bidens. We know this not only because of the rough transcript of the July 25th call that the White House released, but because President Trump admitted it publicly.
Mr. President, what exactly did you hope Zelensky would do about the Bidens after your phone call? Exactly.
Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer.
A very simple answer indeed. And what was the Trump administration willing to do to secure this investigation into the Bidens? Were they willing to hold off a White House meeting, which President Zelensky desperately wanted to show U.S. support to his public and to Putin? Well, here's U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland.
I know that members of this committee frequently frame these complicated issues in the form of a simple question. Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
Yes, Sondland says, no question, it was a quid pro quo. Hey, Ukraine, you want the White House meeting? You need to announce these investigations. Okay, now what about that $400 million in U.S. aid that Ukraine also desperately wanted? Well, Acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney explained why that aid was held up. He said so on camera. Now, he said he did so, the president, because the president wanted an investigation into Ukraine's role in the 2016 election.
The look back to what happened in 2016 certainly was part of the thing that he was worried about in corruption with that nation. And that is absolutely appropriate.
The funding.
Yeah.
To be clear, what you just described is a quid pro quo. It is funding will not flow unless the investigation into the Democratic server happens as well.
We do that all the time with foreign policy. And I have news for everybody. Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy.
So, yes, there was a quid pro quo on the military aid and the other aid, $400 million worth, according to Mulvaney. Now, 2 points on what Mulvaney said there. One, he later tried to unsay what he said. And 2, Mulvaney is portraying this as trying to get Ukraine to participate in a Justice Department investigation into 2016. But that is consistently not what President Trump says he wants. President Trump wants a look into a debunked conspiracy theory about Ukraine and the DNC server that U.S. intelligence officials say was hacked by Russia, not by Ukraine. Now, this is just a fraction of the public evidence, though these are facts seldom even acknowledged by the president's defenders.
The facts are on our side. The facts are on the president's side. The truth is on the president's side.
The truth is, the president of the United States, by his own admission, asked a foreign power to launch a major investigation into his political rival, Joe Biden, his son, and into a debunked conspiracy theory. These are investigations that would help President Trump politically. And according to the president's own aides, the president used a White House meeting and 400 million taxpayer dollars to get Ukraine to do it. Now, you can debate whether or not it's criminal. You can debate whether or not it's impeachable. But you cannot debate whether or not those are the facts.
And yes, you cannot debate it. Well, you can. The only thing you really can debate is that, yes, it is impeachable. You cannot ask a foreign power to investigate your own country, as Donald Trump has done multiple times. The simple fact of the matter is just that now it's getting to the point to where we have to literally break down every word Donald Trump says. When you get down to the point to where you have to break down what pretty much an idiot says, you know he is full of it. So we really shouldn't be surprised at this point that, well, he actually might get it. And who knew that it took a small country of Ukraine to finally be the straw that broke the camel's back? In this case, that broke a toupee. But aside from that, it's not the only bad thing that actually happened this week. Come to find out about bestsellers and whatnot. You know, when I hear bestsellers, you would think that, okay, people like the book, people read the book, and go from there. Everybody's coming out with a book because, let's be honest, book deals are very lucrative. However, I should not be surprised by the next story because it seems very Trumpish.
Republican National Committee has now admitted to buying thousands of copies of Donald Trump Jr.'s new book to ensure its spot on the bestseller list. The book was released November 5th. The following week, it topped the New York Times bestseller list. Already has sold more than 115,000 copies, which is a lot. Financial records show the RNC paid nearly $100,000 to a bookseller just a week before the book was released, causing skeptics to raise eyebrows as it's too unusual for the RNC to promote a book written by a candidate's son who's not a politician and is not running for office. The spokesperson for the RNC previously had said it was ordering copies as supporters requested them, but since has confirmed the bulk purchases. Michael Steele, you ran the RNC for a while. There was an asterisk last week in the New York Times bestseller list that showed there were bulk purchases of this book, didn't say from whom, and now we know it was the RNC.
Of course it was the RNC.
You're not surprised.
SOBs.
Yes, the RNC, otherwise the Republican National Chairman, or I should say committee, bought literally bulk copies, which after some research I found out that yes, you can do that. And if you buy bulk copies of a said book, it becomes a bestseller. How much? Apparently $100,000 worth. $100,000 worth actually gets you on the bestseller list. But is it that truly bad if you really think about it, that the party of your father has to buy your book to make you look good? Doesn't that just scream your book's not that good? Or for the simple fact of the matter, because of your last name and because of your own actions and not the actions of your father, that really we don't really care about what you say. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is he did divorce his wife, remarry, and yet that wasn't even brought up in the campaign trail. But you want to go after everybody else that's had divorces, side chicks, and adulteresses and mistresses. Right. But again, you know, he's a bestseller now because the Republican Party bought his book. Yeah, that's says a lot. But anyway, moving right along, Sacha Baron Cohen, if you don't know who that is, Borat, Ali G in the house, and his many other characters, actually had something very interesting to say about Facebook. Now, I know that this is actually playing on Facebook Live right now, and probably I'm not surprised if it does get cut off as I'm playing this. He brings up a very interesting point, because as you know, Mark Zuckerberg has visited the White House and has defended social media in a way that is cringeworthy. And Sacha Baron Cohen decides in this speech here that he eloquently breaks down the dangers of social media and the simple fact of the matter of not having regulation on it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Facebook were around in the 1930s. It would have allowed Hitler to post 30-second ads on his solution to the Jewish problem. So here's a good standard and practice. Facebook, start fact-checking political ads before you run them Today, around the world, demagogues appeal to our worst instincts. Conspiracy theories, once confined to the fringe, are going mainstream. Hate crimes are surging, as are murderous attacks on religious and ethnic minorities. All this hate and violence is being facilitated by a handful of internet companies that amount to the greatest propaganda machine in history. I believe that it's time for a fundamental rethink of social media and how it spreads hate, conspiracies, and lies. Last month, however, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook delivered a major speech that, not surprisingly, warned against new laws and regulations on companies like his. Well, some of these arguments are simply, pardon my French, bullshit. Let's count the ways. First, Zuckerberg tried to portray this whole issue as choices around free expression. That is ludicrous. This is not about limiting anyone's free speech. This is about giving people, including some of the most reprehensible people on earth, the biggest platform in history to reach a third of the planet. Freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. Sadly, there will always be racists, misogynists, anti-Semites, and child abusers. But I think we can all agree that we should not be giving bigots and pedophiles a free platform to amplify their views and target their victims. Second, Mark Zuckerberg claimed that new limits on what's posted on social media would be to pull back on free expression. This is utter nonsense. We're not asking these companies to determine the boundaries of free speech across society. We just want them to be responsible on their platforms. Third, Mark Zuckerberg seemed to equate regulation of companies like his to the actions of the most repressive societies. Incredible. This from one of the 6 people who decide what information so much of the world sees. Here's an idea. Instead of letting the Silicon Six decide the fate of the world, let our elected representatives, voted for by the people of every democracy in the world, have at least some say. Fourth, Zuckerberg speaks of welcoming a diversity of ideas. And last year he gave us an example. He said that he found posts denying the Holocaust deeply offensive, but he didn't think Facebook should take them down because I think there are things that different people get wrong. To quote Edward R. Murrow, one cannot accept that there are on every story 2 equal and logical sides to an argument. We have, unfortunately, millions of pieces of evidence for the Holocaust. It is an historical fact. And denying it is not some random opinion. Those who deny the Holocaust aim to encourage another one. Fifth, when discussing the difficulty of removing content, Mark Zuckerberg asked, where do you draw the line? Yes, drawing the line can be difficult. But here's what he's really saying. Removing more of these lies and conspiracies is just too expensive. The truth is, these companies won't fundamentally change because their entire business model relies on generating more engagement, and nothing generates more engagement than lies, fear, and outrage. Finally, Zuckerberg said that social media companies should live up to their responsibilities. But he's totally silent about what should happen when they don't. By now, it's pretty clear they cannot be trusted to regulate themselves. As with the Industrial Revolution, it's time for regulation and legislation to curb the greed of these high-tech robber barons. In his speech, Zuckerberg said that one of his main goals is to uphold as wide a definition of freedom of expression as possible. It sounds good. Yet our freedoms are not only an end in themselves, they're also the means to another end. As you say here in the US, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But today these rights are threatened by hate, conspiracies, and lies. The ultimate aim of society should be to make sure that people are not targeted, not harassed, and not murdered because of who they are, where they come from, who they love, or how they pray. If we make that our aim, if we prioritize truth over lies, tolerance over prejudice, empathy over indifference, and experts over ignoramuses, then maybe, just maybe, we can stop the greatest propaganda machine in history. We can save democracy. We can still have a place for free speech and free expression. And most importantly, my jokes will still work. Thank you very much.
And Sacha Baron Cohen does have an excellent point. He is pointing out simple fact of the matter is that social media on sites just like Facebook and every other, and YouTube and all this other crap, do have a certain bastion of actual information. Don't get me wrong. Facebook does have its good points. I mean, we can talk to multiple people. We can share information, recipes, pin interest, all that crap. But he does have a point when it comes to political area. It's just that a lot of stuff gets thrown out there that isn't fact-checked. And you would think for a multi-billionaire that they would go ahead and say, hey, either we're going to fact-check everything that gets put out there, or we're going to make it our point to make sure everything that's put out there on our certain site is correct, 100% accurate. But as Sacha Baron Cohen has pointed out, he knows that he's not about to do that. He wants to sit there and say that social media is our free place, our free places of expression, yes, but at the same time, they're also free places to post whatever you want. Conspiracies, things that don't make any sense, people who are still saying vaccines cause autism, number one. People who say the world is flat, number two. People, we can go down the row of literal things that are said, and yet no fact checking. So why does this matter? Because of the political side of things. That for the simple fact of the matter is that people can post anything, or communities can post anything, or even political ads themselves, because let's be honest, ads are everywhere. It is unfortunately become a fact of life that you probably won't be able to watch anything without seeing ads. As long as advertisers throw money at these companies that show shows and whatnot, your best bet at this point is probably honestly just reading about it now. But even in reading, it has ads. We understand that. But at the same time, political ads that literally are there to push a narrative or to not be truthful or to sit there and get you in a mind state like Fox News does, that's the problem. And if you put in a social media side of things, you're going to reach a lot more people in the same way that you would a television station. And that is the point, that you can spin a narrative or put out a propaganda that people are going to eat up and take. Don't believe me? Where are all these flat earthers coming from? That's a big one. I mean, you've seen the flat earthers. Oh, the world is flat. They just don't want us to know about it. No, it's been debunked. It's fantasy. It's not fact. You want to live in the fantasy, that's fine, but it's not fact. And that's the thing about Facebook, that they choose that. Well, I should say Zuckerberg, because let's be honest, some of y'all have been in Facebook jail for various reasons. And some of them are probably not against, and probably some of them are not justified. But for the simple fact of the matter is, this is the man that's going to sit there and talk about the simple fact of the matter that he has to hold up this freedom of expression. No, what he is holding up is the paycheck that he gets from these ads that are paying him, is what he really wants to say. But I do like the fact that Sacha Baron Cohen really did lay out the facts as far as social media being the new propaganda machine and how we can actually curb it. It makes sense to do so, just off the simple fact of the matter is that it needs to, because we now see the impact of social media and how it can affect not only us, but younger generations as well. But speaking of impacts, I wanted to post. I usually don't post a lot in the ways of manufacturers and things of that nature, unless they're pertinent to job creation or would point to job creation, things of that nature. This was just funny. I'm sorry. It might not be funny to you if you're a Tesla fan, but for me, it was hilarious.
Moment today, Tesla. during their high-profile rollout of their new bulletproof Cybertruck, as they call it. The windows, they say, are unbreakable. Well, then they tried to prove it. Here's ABC's chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, tonight.
Tonight, the Tesla unveiling that shattered expectations. CEO Elon Musk showing off his new Cybertruck. The dramatically reimagined electric pickup with a starting price tag of nearly $40,000.
Doesn't look like anything else.
Drawing some funny reactions on Twitter. One user writing, "Finally, Elon Musk made the car I always drew when I was 5. Another writing, "It immediately reminded me of the Homer Simpson car." But the biggest surprise came from the unveiling itself during a demonstration of the truck's supposedly unbreakable windows. Shattered not once,
Oh my God.
but twice. Musk brushing it off in stride.
Just fix it in post.
This is Tesla's 6th vehicle. It's definitely the most revolutionary, and they'll be competing.
I'm sorry. I was trying to do that when I wasn't on camera, but that was funny as shit to me. Yes, Tesla did unveil their Cybertruck, and its Cybertruck, well, it's something. Honestly, you would think after the Model S, the Model X, the Roadster, and other hybrid vehicles, which in my mind are pretty well designed, this monstrosity for a truck, I was expecting something a little bit more, I don't know, resembling a truck. Like someone said, that's like the car I drew when I was 5 years old, and I thought that cartoons like Silverhawks and Mask were real. And I try to draw cars like that. I didn't think that the actual thing that I drew when I was 5 or 6 would actually be available for 40 grand. I mean, come on, Musk. Is this honestly the best you could do? I just can't imagine somebody in the R&D department going, I wonder how this would look in real life. And they made it, and it's like, yeesh. You think they would have probably been like, let's go back to the drawing board on this. A lot of this does not look right. And on top of that, you said that it was bulletproof armored glass, unbreakable glass. And it's always funny. I wish companies would stop using the word unbreakable. Remember iPhone sat there and said that their Gorilla Glass was unbreakable? Yeah. You realize how quickly Apple stopped saying that their glass was unbreakable when it was turned out to be that it was very breakable. In the same sense where Elon Musk decided to sit there and say, well, this armored glass in our Cybertruck is unbreakable. Let me take a steel ball and throw it out a window. Oh, okay, let me throw that steel ball. Let me throw the steel ball window number 2. Oh, yeah. And it didn't help that after that Tesla unveiling, I guess we can call it, his stock, I guess his value, he lost like $700 million after that. I don't know about y'all. I have a heart attack after losing $7. Could you imagine you wake up the next day and most of your a good amount of your fortune is gone? Don't get me wrong. Elon Musk is a billionaire with a B, but if you lose $700 million overnight, how do you still have a smile on your face? That's my question. Unless you have some wonderful pharmaceuticals, how in the world do you still have a smile on your face when someone's sitting there and telling you, yes, you just lost over $700 million overnight due to that crappy presentation of a Cybertruck car? I mean, there are people out there that actually like it. I personally don't, because I was expecting a little bit more, just because of previous instances that this man has had with previous vehicles that have I'm not all razzed about the self-driving. I'm sorry, I don't trust Skynet to drive my car. But you think after seeing the Cybertruck it would be a little bit better, and turns out it's not, and well, I guess we shouldn't be surprised by that. But speaking of things that we shouldn't be surprised by, and I shouldn't say this, that honestly school shootings are becoming so normal now that my fear is that we're going to start to get desensitized to it. Like it's being accepted, like it's being part of the plan situation. And the reason why I say that is because of how we're kind of reacting to news. News similar to this.
Have stopped a potentially deadly shooting plot. This time, a 13-year-old boy taken into custody. They say he had a hand-drawn map of the school, a list of names, and at home they say they discovered an assault rifle. Here's ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas tonight.
Tonight, an alleged mass shooting plot at this Los Angeles County middle school uncovered.
The threat alleges student was going to shoot other students at the school on Friday, November 22nd, today.
The suspect, only 13 years old. Police searching his home, seizing this assault rifle with a high-capacity magazine, along with 100 rounds of ammo.
The subject also had in his possession a rudimentary hand-drawn map of the school, as well as a list containing names of both students and staff members.
The middle school just an hour away from last week's deadly shooting at Saugus High School, where a 16-year-old suspect opened fire on classmates, killing a 14-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl. The sheriff says students at the suspect's school overheard the threat on campus and reported it right away.
The fact that people stepped forward and said what they had heard led to us to be able to prevent a tragedy today.
So let's get right to Pierre Thomas tonight. Pierre, what more are we learning about the suspect? Do we have any word on a motive tonight?
David, motive is still a mystery tonight. Police are working right now to try to figure that out. They're also trying to determine if that list of students and staff was truly a target list, and they want to know where the boy got that rifle. David?
All right, Pierre Thomas.
Where the boy got that rifle? A 13-year-old has an assault rifle, 100 rounds of ammunition, a list of people that potentially are his hit list, and your question in life is, where did he get the assault rifle? I'm going to guess the parents. Pretty much going to guess the parents. Look, I got nothing against it. Like I always said before, speaking as a gun owner, I get it. I understand it. You do have the right to defend yourself. I will never disagree with that. However, there are some things as far as assault-style weapons and high-capacity magazines that you could argue that you need, but in reality that you don't. More in fact, the matter is that actually is a danger to other people, especially if you have kids in the house. And 9 times out of 10, these kids have been trained to use these weapons. So again, I'm not saying that, you know, the greatest terrorist threat that America faces, because I'm gonna be honest, until this kid's name is mentioned, and because he's a minor, well, I should say because he's a minor and probably, I'm not saying because he's a minor and probably white is the reason why they're not showing his name or his face, but I guarantee it'll probably be shown later, because let's be honest, if it was a black kid, it would have been posted by 9 o'clock news. But the simple fact of the matter is just that we are starting to see a level of homegrown terrorists. I mean, aside from that, another young child, I should say a young woman, decided that she was going to plan a mass shooting at an AME church, predominantly a minority, and it's a white girl. So again, I'm not always, it's like, the one thing I always say, I will keep honestly saying for the longest time, America's greatest threat is the denial that white terrorism exists. That's the truth. Until that is actually acknowledged, we're going to continue to see stuff like this. And until we actually start to take gun laws and registration and legislation very seriously, this is going to keep happening like this. And like I said, until we acknowledge that, yes, America has a white terrorism problem, we're going to keep seeing it. Because for some odd reason, it's attracted to that type. But speaking of those types, the Democratic debate that was actually this past Thursday was interesting. How interesting, you may ask? Well, let's just say we found one that you can sum it up in 4 minutes.
If you win the 2020 election, what would you say in your first call with Russian President Vladimir Putin?
Well, first I'd say, I'm sorry I beat your guy.
Say first, read the Mueller report, all 442 pages of it that showed how the president tried to obstruct justice, check for $1 million. And that tells us about what's happening in Washington. The corruption, how money buys its way into Washington.
I've made it very clear that this is impeachable conduct, and I've called for an impeachment proceeding. I just believe our job as jurors is to look at each count and make a decision.
Sadly, we have a president who is not only a pathological liar, he is likely the most corrupt president in the modern history of America. But we cannot simply be consumed by Donald Trump.
We have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time,
That's
who has spent
ridiculous.
full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal.
Sanders, let me bring you into this conversation
I wrote
and
the damn
ask you
bill.
the question.
I raised $17,000 from ex-boyfriends. And I'd like to point out...
Well, we have a criminal living in the White House. And there is no question that in 2020, the biggest issue before us until we get to that tender moment is justice is on the ballot.
When I was mayor of the largest city in my state, and this is where I agree with Mayor Pete, mayoral experience is very important, and I happen to be the other Rhodes Scholar mayor on this stage.
Should he be impeached and should he be thrown out of office? That's one question. He's very close to he's indicted himself. Number two, after he's thrown out of office or after he's defeated, should he be then prosecuted? Should he be prosecuted for a criminal offense while he was president? That's a judgment to be made by an attorney general.
Do you seriously think anybody on this stage is proposing invading Mexico?
That's not what I said.
About
That's not
building
what I
up.
said.
I'm
That's
talking
not
about
what I
building
said.
up alliances.
It is. Number one, everybody gets out. Record expunged. Secondly, I'm part of that Obama coalition.
I believe that abortion rights are human rights. I believe that they are also economic rights. And protecting the right of a woman to be able to make decisions about her own body is fundamentally what we do and what we stand for as a Democratic Party.
If you give me a chance to lead, I will cause what John Lewis says is good trouble. I will challenge us. I will ask more from you than any other president has ever asked before, because we need to mobilize a new American movement.
For everybody that's watching this, do you feel like your attention span just went left? Not to really say Libran left. I mean, like, you've heard the same thing over and over and over again. Here's the problem with these debates. They're the same. It's almost the same questions get asked, the same responses be given. You still have the same people attacking different people, and at the same time, no one's saying nothing different. And I'm going to be honest, this Democratic debate thing, the field is still so freaking big. And I mean, there are some people that don't need to be there. I'm going to be honest. Amy Klobuchar, I don't know why she's still there. It's like that. It's like, you know what it is? It's like inviting your second grade teacher to your housewarming party, and she never left. That's what it feels like. I mean, I'm sure she's a great representative, but presidential, I don't really see that. In the same way with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris coming out and attacking Tulsi Gabbard, although she wasn't wrong that she was a pundit on Fox News. She did speak out against President Obama, his entire administration. She's not wrong on anything that she said toward the senator from Hawaii. The thing is, Kamala, it's like you spend so much time attacking that we don't really hear anything that you have to say that's kind of beneficial toward the American people. So you're still there. Joe Biden, I'm sorry, too old. Too old, and honestly, there's not a connection between him and the newest crop of voters. Don't get me wrong, he was vice president to arguably one of the greatest presidents we've ever had in modern history. And I'm not only saying that because he was black. It's the simple fact of the matter is President Obama got a lot done with an oppositional Congress that was against him, and at the same time, pushed through some legendary legislative measures that probably would have never seen the light of day otherwise. So I get that Biden's going to sit there and say, yeah, I was a part of that. Without some of the actions that I was able to do, none of that would be possible. Okay, I'll give you that. But what are you going to do going forward? You just can't sit there and say, I'm the other white guy you can vote for. And again, he does have those moments where his seasoning shows more than his presidential behavior, I would say. And let's get it straight. Andrew Young. Ewan Young. I was thinking the guy from Walking Dead. Andrew Young, again, I'm not saying that he can't be president, but he's not using that freedom dividend. Or I don't know why he calls it freedom dividend. Like, you put work, buzzwords like America, freedom, dividend. At this point, let's just call it what it is, universal basic income. If he kept going with that and expanded into it and really tried to show it could work, that would get people on his side. And again, it's like I said, the field is so freaking big. Like Pete Buttigieg, again, he's one that is making ground. I can understand, because for a long time I kept saying, why is he here? Because of course he's from the same mayor. He's the same mayor of the same city that was having issues with police brutality and minorities in his town. He did acknowledge it and is trying to actually get more black voters to understand him and get to know him as far as to connecting. Things that Kamala Harris should be doing and Cory Booker should be doing. But again, I'm surprised that he's still there. And let's not forget, when it really comes down to it, it's like, I'm going to be honest, from this crop of people we can vote for, it's either going to be Warren or it's going to be Sanders. Both of them have sat there and said multiple times and in plans what they want to do, and they keep reiterating it. But the problem with these debates is that it's literally the same thing. And at the same time, I want actual answers more so than what I'm getting. Because right now they're getting softball questions. I would like Kamala Harris to stand on her prosecution record. I would like Cory Booker to stand on his relationship with Jared Kushner and hosting a fundraising for them. I would like for Tulsi Gabbard to stand on her previous relationship with Fox News. I would like for everybody that literally has that blemish, because there's no such thing as an unblemished politician. I want that to be stood on and to be attacked, and for them to show that, hey, to show the simple fact of the matter is, this is presidents what you have to deal with. If a black man had to deal with it for 8 years, and god dang it, one of y'all should be able to do the same. And at this point, only 3 candidates on that stage actually show me that they want to be there. The rest of them, why? Honestly. But speaking of things that just don't make any sense, Syracuse University has came across a lot of things as, if you're from Syracuse, if you're at Syracuse currently, well, if you're black, this is going to pertain to you.
In that series of racist incidents at Syracuse University, 4 students have now been suspended, accused of verbally assaulting a black classmate. While overnight new protests erupted there on campus. Gio Benitez is there with more on this. Good morning, Gio.
Hey, Cecilia, good morning. Yeah, the students here want the university to expel anyone involved in hate speech. They also want more diversity programs. This as police and the FBI investigate all of those incidents. Overnight, protests breaking out at Syracuse University as students demand action following a string of 12 racist incidents at the school. The protest began when demonstrators stormed out of a public meeting with the university's chancellor, upset that he and other school officials are refusing to resign. On Wednesday, the school announcing the suspension of 4 students tied to one of those incidents of verbal assault on a black student. The chancellor getting emotional at a meeting with university leadership overnight.
We just cannot let our students of color, our Jewish students, our Asian students, or any of our students or faculty and staff be afraid on this campus because of who they are.
This just a day after a popular professor received an anonymous anti-Semitic email. The professor later tweeting, "I'm not afraid to stand up for what I believe. Threats won't stop me." And just days ago, a swastika drawn in the snow.
I live like 3 blocks away from where the swastika was drawn, so it is really scary.
Among the disturbing cases that have caused uproar at the school, a white supremacist manifesto allegedly spread around campus. But now the chancellor saying that incident may actually be a hoax. Law enforcement unable to find any individual who directly received the alleged airdrop.
It concerns me to go to school with people that think that this is okay. It's disheartening.
And this morning, the chancellor's office tells ABC News he's agreed to most of the student demands, but the chancellor is not resigning. Michael?
All right. Yeah, it is kind of messed. It is beyond messed up. That, of course, you would think so more so at a school, but yet a university, a place of higher learning, that apparently racism, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy still seems to make its way up there. Because let's be honest, racists still got to get jobs. At the same time, the president, who knows? It's like, I'm not going to resign. You've had at least two accounts of racial attacks, especially one being verbal, directed at a black student. Oh, I'm not going to resign, but you're not going to expel the students, which he says that now we're going to suspend them and not expel them. Okay, I should have saw that coming. You know, the best way to get a chancellor out of a school to resign? Syracuse has a basketball and a football program. I wonder what would happen if all the players decided they do not want to play games. How quickly that would turn around. And I'm going to be honest with you, and I said that's how colleges work. Unfortunately, unless it is so vile, so damaging that a chancellor wouldn't leave or an administrator wouldn't leave, that the only way that you can affect them is to affect what brings in what colleges need most: money. And if the Syracuse football program, basketball, and all the collegiate sports athletes decided just they weren't going to play, that would probably change the chancellor's tune. But yes, all this happened on your watch, sir, so something of that major does need to change. And if they're calling for simple fact of the matter is that you apologizing is not enough, it's time to it's at that point, it's time to step down. Or at least wait until the college teams, like I said before, if athletes for Syracuse stop playing, that'll get the chancellor to shut down in a second. But speaking of things that are being shut down, or I should say being ignored, because that was a terrible segue. Thing about this election year is honestly what's not being talked about is the African American vote. I know for a lot of people among our diverse, eclectic, talented group of my brothers and sisters, let's be honest, we are truly the Wakandians of America. We are. I'm going to go ahead and stand on that. But I have had many discussions where people have sat there and said, well, when it comes to politics, we're just not interested, just because they're not talking about us. They're not talking about what we can get. They'll talk about everybody else under the sun, but they won't talk about us. And I hear that, understand that, and which is the reason why the next couple of minutes on this particular article is going to start to make sense, because we are the ignored minority, and yet they want us to vote.
Feeling down there, Joe Biden has a huge lead right now.
Yes, Joe Biden has a blowout lead in South Carolina, 33% of support, according to the latest Quinnipiac University poll, but even higher among African Americans, 44%. Behind me was the restaurant where he officially filed to be on the ballot in South Carolina. And when he came out, he told me, listen, I'm very confident. I actually feel very confident in my support in African American voters. But just being here, I spoke to one of his volunteers who, when he stepped away from the campaign, he actually revealed to me that he likes Kamala Harris, but isn't sure if she can win. And so until she or another candidate can prove that they can actually beat President Trump in the 2020 election, he's sticking with Biden. I've also been to Atlanta recently on the debate. I went to a debate watch party hosted by New Georgia Project. And right before, there was a Black Man's Roundtable where they talked about voting and they talked about the candidates that they support. And just speaking to some of what we saw in your package, the Black men that I spoke to, some of them low income, some of them very affluent, all said that they don't hear their stories and their concerns reflected in the 2020 issues that the candidates are talking about, particularly with healthcare, particularly with paternal rights, which is something that a lot of African American males, face struggles with. And you're seeing that all around, the state, especially in the South, Black voters supporting Biden because they're not sure who else could take the election.
Yeah, sort of Biden by default. Not a lot of excitement there in the African American community, but certainly a sense that he could win. And as you said, Brianna, a lot of discussion about these candidates, and so far sort of a lack of addressing the issues that are important to that community. Here was Senator Kamala Harris just at the debate this week making this very point. Let's take a look.
Yeah.
For too long, I think candidates have taken for granted constituencies that have been the backbone of the Democratic Party and have overlooked those constituencies. And they show up when it's, close to election time and show up in a black church and want to get the vote, but just haven't been there before.
So, Rachel, she makes the point. She talks the talk. She keeps driving home that the candidates, her peers, need to reach out. And yet even Kamala Harris is struggling to build African-American support. What's going on? What are you hearing when you travel the country?
Well, that is what is so interesting, right? When we look at even the national polls, we see that the leading front runners are white. And black voters, as we have mentioned, are a key demographic here. But it's also important for us to keep in mind as we continue to analyze the polls in these key early voting states that black voters don't make up the majority of those states, other than South Carolina. But Iowa and New Hampshire, right, as we're looking
very
at,
white states.
It's a very white state. And so while all of these candidates are spending so much of their time there, courting all of these voters, at some point they are going to have to turn over to a different demographic and have their message resonate within that community.
So the candidates that may do best in Iowa and New Hampshire may not fare so well in some of the Super Tuesday states, California as a good example there. Justin, I want to bring you into this because Pete Buttigieg is having a breakout moment in the early states that Rachel's talking about, Iowa, New Hampshire. We see the numbers. He's topping the polls there. And yet, let's put back up the numbers from South Carolina. Look at where Pete Buttigieg stands among African-American voters in South Carolina. Less than 1%. He's below Marianne Williamson, who I can't remember the last time she was on the debate stage. What are you making of that, Justin? What does the campaign feel that this is a crisis point? This is not a new phenomenon for him.
The campaign isn't there just yet. They're not saying that it's a crisis. We heard him on the debate stage this week say that he welcomes the challenge of black voters getting to know him. For Pete Buttigieg, this is still early on. He still sees South Carolina as a ways away. He's openly acknowledging the struggle he's having with gaining their support. And we even heard him tell Lindsay Davis yesterday, ABC's Lindsay Davis, that he's got his work cut out for him and that it's going to take more than just presenting his Douglas plan to black communities. They also have to get to know who he is. He's a newcomer to the scene. He's brand new to the national field coming into the race this year. And I just want to go back to those Quinnipiac numbers, almost below 1% in there, but also his favorability, 22% among black voters, but then the other one, 60% of black voters say that they still haven't heard enough about him. And that's something that he keeps going back to. When you ask him about that poll, he references that number, showing that there is still a lot of room for improvement there in that state. And that's how he sees that he can grow there.
And we will see if Pete Buttigieg can turn things around with black voters, spend more time in those communities. Of course, Justin Gomez, you will be there all along.
Okay, so pretty much the simple fact of the matter is that when it comes down to it, like they said, why is it that only candidates decide to curb, that's a terrible word, court is the word I was looking for, when they try to court the black vote? I mean, for the simple fact of the matter is, like you said, like they said in the video, what simple fact of the matter is just that we are possibly the most ignored demographic in voting until it's time to need us. Now, Republicans have made a point of this, especially Republican and conservative voices like Tommy Lauren and Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro have all made this point of how, a lot of us who vote Democratic are still on the plantation, that the Republican Party was initially the champion of African Americans, historically, things of that nature. The thing about it is, if you really want to be honest, one party really wants us to be back in chains, and one party just simply ignores us till they need us. And to a certain extent, it's put such a distaste in black people's mouths that I get the whole idea of, why you don't want to vote. I get the whole idea of they don't care about us. I get the whole idea of, they're not saying the things that relate or help me or things of that nature. They're not helping me. They're not helping me with helping my income gap. They're not helping with my education. They're not helping me with student loans, with business loans, with minority stakes, things of that nature. They're not saying a lot, and I get that. I can't argue that. I mean, if honestly the closest thing we had to a candidate that was actually really trying to reach out to voters, black people especially, was Obama. Let's just be honest. Obama led a grassroots campaign, and he reached out to black folks and pretty much tried to help us. Now, I defend him to the point to where it's like, well, what has Obama done for me and things of that nature? And I've always had to defend him in saying, look, he's one guy that was going up against a House and a Senate that really didn't want him there initially. So I give the man credit due for what he tried to do, but I can't. But again, I do see the other side of the argument where, you know, if they're trying to court votes, what are we really there for? I mean, you don't really hear some candidates saying exactly what they can do for us. You don't hear that. And I think that, and I've said it best, and I hate to be honest about this, but the reason why I believe that the black vote really isn't talked about that much is because other majorities, white people, simply don't want to hear it. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Why is it that you won't go? You say that you go to everybody, but like they said, you show up in a black church only during election time. You're never in a black church when it's in the off season. You're never at a chicken joint. Which, let's be honest, how many candidates do you see in the black community that are always in some black businesses, but they're only there during election years? They're not there during the rest of the year. I mean, for the simple fact of the matter, it's just that perception is everything. So I can see that. And that's going to be something we're going to be talking about a little bit more on my other podcast later on tonight. Just because I do believe that in order for us to be heard, that we do need to organize and go from there. But that is a point, though, when it comes to the black vote. It doesn't get as much. I'll put it this way: if you put up a show, if you actually put up two news segments, if you put up one that sat there and said, "Here's one about the black vote, here's one about farmers," which one is going to get the more play? The farmers who are bankrupt because they can't sell their crops, or you're going to get the people who are black people who are concerned their votes are not being heard? Which group is going to watch the other one? One versus the other. Just saying. But moving right along as far as that goes, guys, unfortunately we have another story of police injustice, I would say. In this case, this was just sad because I think this is a situation that could have been avoided had the police tried a different tactic.
Stop! Stop! Stop!
Doing this, stop.
You don't even have no camera on.
Yes, we do. It's right here.
Put it on.
It's on. That's why it's green.
Pick up the phone.
Hey, stop. We're trying.
My daughter, she's 4. She died
Okay,
yesterday.
we're trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, do you realize we're patrolling this area for a reason? You okay?
You're about
to go to jail for disorderly.
Yeah, and miss my daughter's funeral because you don't want to lock me up because I'm walking
No,
back.
that's not what we want you to do. You're not. We're making sure that
I said leave me
a
alone.
room key. We want to make sure that you are staying here.
And he grabbed
But
my hand.
because you got to let us see it.
Mom,
it's that simple.
pick up the phone.
Like, you're making this way more than it needs to be.
Leave me alone.
But that's not how it works. I'm gonna go find. This isn't how this is gonna keep working. That's not how it works.
Stop!
Stop! Stop!
You know, oh my God!
Stop!
Would you stop? Leave me alone!
No, it doesn't work that way.
Oh
It's
my
what you're
God!
That's what you're gonna do. Give me your. We don't want to take anybody to jail, but
I'm gonna give you my ID from tell.
You just tell us what your name is. You gotta let us talk to you and do our job.
Mommy, get the down here. The police are out here trying to arrest me. Get down here right now, quick, Richie.
No, we are not.
Get down right here, right now. Now!
Stop yelling.
The police are outside!
Stop yelling.
What? Get down
Stop
here right now.
yelling. Stop yelling.
You're gonna arrest me, mommy!
Stop.
Stop!
Stop.
Stop! Stop!
Stop.
Stop! Ah! Mommy! Stop! I didn't even do anything!
Yes, you want orderly conduct.
What the Get the off me!
7-5, one female in custody.
And it is tough to watch. It really is. That the backstory about this is that she was a mother who had recently lost her 4-year-old daughter, and that the family was actually staying in the hotel, and she decided that she just basically needed some fresh air, and that she just needed to go outside and walk around. Apparently, a call was put in about suspicious activity, and the police actually approached the woman. And as you can see from the video, it escalated into arrest, as they say, it was disorderly conduct. And of course, the problem with that is that this could have all been avoided on the police's behalf. I understand, and a lot of people don't honestly understand this, and probably decide that they will not understand this. It's just that with the most recent interactions with black people and police, it has never really ended well for the minority. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, for a lot of us that see law enforcement, we're going to be questioning whether or not we'll be able to go home the next day or go home that night, much less survive. So, so you can see from her point, it's just that you see two cops approaching you, you just buried your daughter. I mean, what else is going through your mind as far as just two men who are armed, who have probably no reason, who probably would kill me with no remorse? So you can understand her panic along with her grief. I hold the officers accountable in this responsibility because for the simple fact of the matter is they could have used a little bit more on the customer service side of the game, where you could have sat there and said, you know, try a different approach. Just said, especially with Calmer, because old boy from the side at least kept his distance. It was his partner that was just literally about to come up on the woman in a threatening manner, and of course she got defensive. Of course she got agitated. You have one person that's talking right in front of you like a normal human being, and yet you got one person on your right-hand side that's just ready to tackle you. At the same time, I'm like, well, can't you just tell us? Can't you just tell us? If you're yelling, if you yell at a person while they're yelling, they're just going to yell more. Anybody in customer service will be able to tell you that. Versus you just speaking calmly and allowing them to de-escalate would have probably led to a different situation. Now, do I sit there and say for simple fact of the matter is just that the cops could have done things differently? Yes. This honestly could have just been a simple, just a check, if you don't mind. I mean, we're not here to hurt you. Keep your safe distances. Things of that nature could have been done all to de-escalate, and it would have been just, oh, she stays here, we can move on. Instead of them, arresting her because they thought she was being disorderly and resisting arrest and things of that nature. The shit they got to add on to justify the reason why they got to arrest you, although they have no reason to arrest you. Really should be surprised by that, but very, very sad for that. And I hope also the family does pursue civil action, because that definitely does need to be addressed and honored, and the reason why there needs to be civilian oversight over police officers. But speaking of oversight, for all you Epstein fans, because I cannot stress so much that yes, you have to remind us, Epstein didn't hang himself. And yet, we understand it, but you still want us to talk about it. Well, here you go.
In Manhattan, Jeffrey Epstein was supposed to be checked on every half hour. Instead, prison cameras reveal the accused sex trafficker went unchecked from approximately 10:30 p.m. August 9th until 6:30 a.m. the next day, when he was found dead in his cell, according to federal prosecutors. In fact, during that time, no one entered the unit where he was being held. The official cause of death remains suicide. Now the two guards who were on duty that night face criminal charges, falsifying records and conspiracy. According to the indictment, Michael Thomas and Tova Noel sat at their desk, browsed the internet, and moved around the common area. For 2 hours, they appeared to be asleep. One of them had worked a double shift, 16 hours straight. Both pleaded not guilty. When Epstein was discovered, prosecutors say, Thomas told the supervisor, "We didn't do any rounds." Epstein was being held in an 8-person special housing unit in a cell just 15 feet away from the officers, put there because there were concerns he may want to take his own life after an apparent failed suicide attempt 2 weeks before.
This incident was a black eye on the entire Bureau of Prisons.
In a Senate hearing today, the director of prisons, Kathleen Hawks Sawyer, said she couldn't comment on ongoing FBI and Inspector General investigations into Epstein's death.
You say you can't testify about it, but the reason you're director now is because the last guy got fired, right?
Senator, I can't tell you what I don't know.
Senator Ben Sasse growing frustrated that Epstein's accusers don't have answers.
With all due respect, you still have an obligation to speak to the girls who were raped by this guy.
Well, Stephanie, emotions clearly running high at that.
Yes, emotions clearly running high indeed. And at the same time, they had to have their pound of flesh. There's just no way around that. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. We all know what happened. He was about to sing like a canary. But there were powers that be that decided that he needed to be silenced. I'm not going to dip into that conspiracy theory just because the fact of the matter is he was probably bound for the electric chair anyway. So, with that being said, can we please stop the Facebook memes about, and Epstein didn't hang himself? We know. Let it go. You're never going to, and I hate to say that, but it's like you're never going to find out. I honestly believe we're never going to find out the truth of really what happened in that cell. I mean, they can sit there and paint this picture that he was literally and figuratively suicidal, and rightfully he should be because he was literally part of the giant sex trafficking, sex slave ring, and he should have faced his charges accordingly. But hey, he's got to answer for it somewhere. But aside from that, guys, our next to last story before we get to our good news segment. How many people love driving cars? I know I do. I'm a car guy. There's nothing about it. I do love cars, things of that nature. However, as the income gap in this country just seems to get more and more vast, it comes to the whole point of it. It's like for people who are below the, I guess you could say the median now is 85,000. So let's just say if you're below 55,000. If you're below 55,000. Could you afford a brand new car? And I love this story just because it says so much about the car industry, banking, and your income.
And today we look at the rising cost of cars. Americans are paying about 38% more for a new car or truck over the summer than they were just 10 years ago. And the average transaction price for some popular vehicles is up nearly 50, 60, even 70%. So how are drivers affording it? Well, as we found out, many are not.
That's right.
You can always count on the auto industry.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
To keep your heart pounding.
You can be an explorer right here on Earth.
And your imagination racing.
It's the official truck of real people.
But before you hurry on down to your local lot, consider our experience.
Here in Vineland, New Jersey, the typical family takes home about $39,000 a year after taxes. We were curious, what kind of car or truck could we get on that income? So we checked in with CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger, kind of our in-house financial planner, and she recommended spending 10 to 15% of that income monthly on a vehicle. That leaves us with about a $400 a month budget. So let's see what we can get.
Tony, welcome. Hi. Ivan Nelson, how you doing?
Tony Nicole.
At family-owned Lilliston Ford, the manager wooed us.
You're not really gonna believe this car. Yeah? Really, it's just super cool.
With a Ford Explorer. Packed with technology.
These are sonar sensors?
Yeah, little sensors. You see the tire pressures are all set at 41.
No more putting the gauge on the tire and measuring it manually. This touchscreen is now standard?
It's standard on all models, absolutely.
The car itself has Wi-Fi?
Has a modem.
Oh. We also saw a powerful F-150 Lariat.
Not only a 12 volt, but has a 110.
It's got its own GPS.
Own GPS.
Gosh, there's even a button here that adjusts the pedal angle.
But was any of it in our $400 budget?
Your monthly payment would be $853.
$853. All right.
Not even close. And that's life for a record number of Americans these days. The big three automakers are retiring many family sedans while rolling out souped-up SUVs and trucks. at premium rates that families often can't afford without taking on loans that are now larger and longer than ever.
I know this sounds crazy, but I couldn't get rid of the screen and just go back to the old cassette tape and the manual windows.
Ivan did find us a simpler truck closer to our budget, but with a catch.
Look at that, $446. But 96 months, is that 8 years?
8 years.
Those long loans can create lower monthly payments, but it doesn't always mean you can afford the car.
More and more vehicles are ending up here at the repo lot. Last year, a record number of Americans fell behind on their car payments. More than 7 million people at least 90 days late.
Okay.
And when that happens, people like CJ Faison get a call. His family sells repossessed vehicles at auction in Delaware. We asked if he's seen more business.
Tons.
Tons of repos?
Yeah, I would say it's probably doubled, if not tripled.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why?
I think mainly because there's people who are going longer terms on cars. They're more expensive. You owe more on the car than what it's worth.
Do you think that car manufacturers have a role in this?
I think they do. They have priced cars out of a lot of people's budgets. There's finance companies through these manufacturers now to let people afford these cars by stretching the loans out to 6, 7, 8 years on a car. It blows my mind.
We reached out to the 3 biggest American automakers.
The fundamental mystery to me is, why does a median income, a middle class income, not get you the average car anymore?
Manufacturers play a key role in setting vehicle prices.
I mean, I'll put it bluntly, are you guys being greedy?
But none would go on camera to discuss pricing, and we still needed a car. So,
welcome to Chevrolet Center.
We headed south in search of a better deal.
Down here in Winter Haven, Florida, a typical family income is about $35,000 a year after taxes, which means a responsible monthly car payment might be about $350.
Thank you.
We zeroed in on a new Chevy Impala.
This one does not have ventilated seats.
No ventilated seats, no!
But once again, our budget was shot.
Can I get rid of the halogen headlamps?
No.
Keyless open?
No.
The infotainment system?
No.
In the end, the only car in stock that our middle-class budget would comfortably allow was the Spark, Chevrolet's smallest vehicle.
Is that the only one you have on the lot?
I have 2 just like that one. They're twins.
But same color?
Same color.
What is that, a pink or is that red?
It's a pink.
Can we call it a red?
We can call it a red.
But it's a pink.
Yeah, we'll call it a red.
It's a red?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I love my Chevy Spark. The official color on that car, by the way, is raspberry.
Which is somewhere between pink and red.
I want to thank those guys at Lewiston Ford and also Winter Haven Chevrolet. They tried to get me.
Yes, and that's the thing I wanted to point out so much, because like I said, as a car guy, I love cars, but there just seems to be that area between banks, car manufacturers, and income. That's always those 3 things. I know you probably heard it from Dave Ramsey and all those other credit guys that credit is king and all that bullshit, and that to a point is true. But the simple fact of the matter is, you're talking about it from a bank financing and qualifying situation. I'm saying for the simple fact of the matter is just that, what is it about the pricing? What is it about banks? What is it about the income gaps? Because let's be honest, if you don't think money talks, I got some beachfront property in Ohio I want to sell you. Because for the simple fact of the matter, people who aren't making people who aren't making, again, the median income, if you're under $50,000 a year, then buying a new car, unless you have a hella down payment, unless you get those 6, 7, or even 8-year car loans. Think about that. An 8-year car loan. By the time you're finished paying that off, you would have paid more than the car is worth. That's why most folks will tell you when you're actually financing a car, never go more than 4 years, because at that point you're paying more than the value of the car. Now I understand that if you go beyond 4 years, if you go into 5 and 6 and all this crap, then yes, the payments will be lower. But no one ever asked the question of why. I mean, yes, the banks do set why banks set the pricing? Why car manufacturers go along with certain lenders? Why the simple fact of the matter is just that when it comes down to it, aside from your credit score, that they want so much more out of you to get on that end. And The CBS correspondent said it best. Are you guys being greedy? Considering the fact that 3 of the biggest automakers had a bailout a little over a decade ago. When they went to Congress and cried, we need more money, otherwise people are going to lose their jobs. We're not going to be able to do this. And Congress bailed them out. And the same way the banks were bailed out. So give me this straight. Congress bailed out the banks. Congress bailed out the big auto three. But yet when it comes to you just wanting to get a decent ride, to get around and to be able to go to work and, if you have kids, to get them around and whatnot, why is the person at the bottom of the totem pole getting shafted? And it's amazing how the 2 that did get bailed out by government subsidiaries will not sit there and say anything, except for the simple fact of the matter that all it can be is greed. So, I guess in this case, we'll have to stick with the Tesla Cybertruck with the bulletproof windows and the Tonka truck front end frame. But for the simple fact of the matter, it amazes me so about stories like that I think there does need to be transparency, especially with the automotive industry and the banking industry. 2 industries that got bailed out by taxpayer money but yet do not owe taxpayers anything. How does that work? Anyway, that's going to really do it for our story. So the last thing I got left is a good news segment. Because I do know on How the Frack We Got Here, we do talk about a lot of things that are doom and gloom and things of that nature. But it's the weekend. We want to leave you guys on a good note. Something to actually, groove out on. And I know I've been saying this on my Facebook post that it's too early. Give the turkey his day, and then you Christmas people can just rock it on out for your 31 days plus, because y'all can't. Okay, short rant. Why in the world could you not sit there and let Thanksgiving just happen? It kills me. It's like for stores already have Christmas stuff up. Black Friday sales are already posted, which is to be expected. It used to be the day after Thanksgiving that you have Black Friday sales. Now they're just going ahead and doing a week early. I get that. Between Black Friday and Cyber Monday, I get it. But you Christmas people kill me. How in the world did the moment that November 1st came around, you're already putting up the holiday lights, the decorations? You at this point just said bump the turkey. You just sat there and said, let's just go straight into Christmas. You literally have 31 days. You have 31 days of Christmas. You can knock it on out until New Year's. But for some odd reason, you just won't give the turkey his due. Why? Do you love Christmas that much? Could you not wait for your peppermint and eggnog? Could you not wait to watch Elf more times than not? Because I'm going to be honest with you. I want to make it my point to watch Die Hard for the next 31 days of December. Why? Because Die Hard is a Christmas movie and a lot more enjoyable than A Christmas Story. But rant over, because I just had to get that out of my system. But aside from that, I do have some stories that two of them actually do involve Santa, which I thought was pretty cool, especially in this case when dealing with autism, just because that's near and dear to my heart, and that I think it's really a misunderstood diagnosis. And autism is not a disease; it honestly just needs to be understood, because autistic people are just like you and me. There is no difference to them. They just have a different way of doing it, and it should be understood and loved. But I love what this Santa Claus did.
But you're okay, buddy. You're okay. Aw, that's so special. Here, buddy. Here's a candy cane for you. And then one for the mommy. There's a sticker.
Thank you. That made your day.
Here, buddy. You have a Merry Christmas, okay, buddy?
And that was pretty cool. So like I said before, the guy playing Santa recognized that the kid was autistic and that, you know, he was having a breakdown, and he did his best to comfort him and to let him know everything was okay. And trust me, as a person who interacts with autistic people, you do have, I mean, there is nothing, like I said before, I cannot stress this enough. There is absolutely nothing wrong with them. It's the simple fact of the matter is that you have to understand it is a behavior that you have to learn to go to work with as far as with them. Because especially with children. Because children, like I said, children these days, children with autism process differently. And the simple fact of the matter is that, again, there's nothing wrong with that. You have to learn to adapt, just like any other child. You have to learn to adapt to them. You have to learn to, you know, understand their moods, understand this and that and the other. Because there's nothing wrong with autistic children. I personally think they're just like regular children. It's a different puzzle to figure out, and every puzzle has a piece, and every piece fits. Simple as that. But I do love the simple fact of the matter that Santa do understanding that and recognizing that and doing his best to calm that child down. And as I think about that Santa, I wish I found a black Santa so I could remind Megyn Kelly every year Santa Claus can be black. Aside from that, aside the other Santa story I got, I just thought about that as that story was going on, because you remember that whole thing about Megyn Kelly saying Santa Claus can't be black, he has to be white. And I was thinking to myself, share this black Santa for no reason other than piss Megyn Kelly off. I know it's supposed to be a good news segment, but it's good news to me. But anyway, there's another thing I want to show about Santa Claus. Like I said, it's the whole thing about this guy really taking to heart what he loves to do, and I just want to play this video as well.
A decades-long tradition on Santa Lane. Jordan Howard has already started wrapping Christmas gifts for local children in need with the help of the community. And soon he'll step into his Santa suit, just as his father did for 42 years.
Some people believe Christmas decorations should go up only after Thanksgiving, but don't tell that to the people on Santa Lane. Jordan Howard, who lives on the Kentucky street, has been prepping for Christmas since Halloween, decorating and wrapping thousands of presents for children he doesn't even know.
I'd say we got over 1,000 right now, and it's just middle way, halfway through.
Soon, Howard will dress up like Santa Claus and bring toys to children who otherwise might not get gifts. The tradition of giving back started with his dad. For 42 years, Mike Howard dressed up like Mountain Santa, bringing toys to kids in need, until he passed away.
So Dad told me before he passed, he said, you got to have the Lord in it. So that's what I'm doing.
Just 8 months after his father passed, Howard's mother died. Now he dresses up like Mountain Santa to honor both of them.
It's a feeling that you can't describe. When you don't think that a community would come together like they have to continue to keep doing this. But it's awesome. It is, it's just amazing. I don't know, it's something.
Thanks to the community members who help him wrap presents, Howard is able to keep the holiday tradition alive. So, it might seem early to get ready for Christmas, but on Santa Lane, it's not about decorations. It's about continuing the family tradition of giving back.
And you gotta love that. Like I said, stories like that where it's just, yes, I know it's early. I've been saying it, Christmas is early, but you gotta love the simple fact of the matter of a guy who just simply wants to continue as far as being charitable and being lovable and being Mountain Santa. I'm not gonna lie, the first time I saw the Mountain Santa, I was kind of expecting Santa like Santa who's, you know, never left the gym, you know, kind of like if the Hulk was in a red suit, kind of. But, you know, different aspects. But love the fact of what he was doing, and the simple fact of the matter is that he did this for the kids, and it's all about the kids, really. And I can't knock people who just simply want to give and spread joy. That itself is a treasure that should be honored and defended. But moving right along, guys, the last feel-good story I have, honestly, I think is going to be great, especially for this mom. And not really a video on this one. So you've probably seen this kid, a 5-year-old drummer, right? Basically, her son, Jeremiah Travis, who is this kid in this video, literally 5 years old with the marching band. and he loves. I mean, the kid's talented. He's actually got YouTube videos out there. He can definitely play. He can definitely play that drum at 5 years old. So, come to find out, after that went viral, Alcorn State University in Mississippi gave that child at 5 years old, gave him a full ride band scholarship to Alcorn State. Now, I think that's cool. Just the simple fact of the matter is that he wants to. I mean, as far as him playing on the drums, being talented, that's cool. But as a parent, do you not understand the wave of relief that your child has a full ride to college and he's not even past 7? Not only is that a relief farther down the road, that is fucking bragging rights. My child got a scholarship. Well, my child colored inside the lines. I admit, you can sit there and say, my baby got a scholarship already. He's set. And I love the simple fact of the matter that, at 5 years old, that kid honestly has nothing to worry about. And like I said, Jeremiah Travis, he definitely does have YouTube videos out there. And like I said, the kid is good. I'm not gonna lie. There are some kids out there that can play like grown ass adults, and that talent still mystifies me to this day. Because the best I can do is rock band. I mean, if a 5-year-old can play drum major with a band, and me being a 30-plus-year-old man still happy about getting legendary status on Rock Band or Guitar Hero, different accolades. But anyway, that's going to be the end of our show, guys. Thank you all for watching. I always want to say thank you, just because I did not know how long I've been doing this. I started out actually doing this just because the simple fact of the matter is just that the news segments and things of that nature just never really hit home. I mean, a lot of stories get swept under the rug, but not a lot of stories actually get brought to light, which is what I want to do here. Not to show a narrative or a perspective, but to just give an open-ended view of all the facts and allow you to make up your own minds. But I do love the fact, because I always wondered if people really do pay attention to this, or people actually watch this, things of that nature. You have that kind of thing going on in your head. And I am always surprised about how many people actually look forward to watching this, or how many people actually, I'm not going to say depend on this, but like to actually see a different view. And do let me know that I'm doing a great job. Some people let me know there were some things that I said that may not have been favorable. That's fine. I take open criticism on both sides. But I do want to thank everybody that watches, personally, just because I try to do the best I can. I try to actually show a perspective, and not just from one side, but from all sides. And like I said, present the information, the facts to you to make up your own mind, as it should be. But again, I always want to say thank you, because I never want to sit there and say very grateful for everybody who watches, shares, or starts watch parties. I am always grateful for that. Aside from that, guys, I do get some shameless promotions out the way, because I'm not the only cat doing this. The person behind me, which you probably can't see right now, I'll be having a podcast up very soon. Thomas Reed, we call him Mountain Puncher. Also, I call him Tank Top. Chances are today you might not be in one, but I know he might be. I don't know. It depends on how he feels. But he actually has a podcast called To Be Determined. What is To Be Determined? To Be Determined is a fitness podcast in which you see my buddy Thomas, the man stays in the gym all the time. I mean, all the time. I mean, if the gym was a woman, he is the most faithful man I have ever seen in my whole entire life, because he never skips a day not going to the gym. Not to make fun of him, he's just that dedicated. It's just that he does love to talk about fitness, loves to talk about nutrition, loves to talk about workouts, loves to talk about the subjects that, most fitness podcasts won't talk about. Like that creepy trainer that sits behind women while he squats, but yet he suddenly has a heart on. You know who I'm talking about. But again, To Be Determined podcast, which is every Saturday on Facebook Live. Please look up Thomas Reed on Facebook and go ahead and like or follow him, or even add him as a friend. He might find you friendly or not. I'm not sure, but hey, take a roll. But again, every Saturday at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Facebook Live, please look up Thomas Reed and go from there. My other brother from another mother, Vaughn, Ace the Vaughn Witherspoon on Facebook, BigPZA on YouTube, has several podcasts of his own. He actually has the VST, which is a podcast of various news. That news could be video games, that news could be music, that news could be movie trailers, because he loves trailers, but loves to bring forth new things that may not grab a lot of attention and things of that nature, and really wants to bring it to the forefront in that very short podcast, which again is all BSTs. He also has Rhythmness, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, in which he goes over albums both previous in the past and upcoming ones, and rates to a 4-tier system. If you probably see me on that podcast, I probably have nuked a lot of the stuff just because I do consider myself kind of a snob when it comes to great music, because not everybody's music is great, let's just be honest. But you want to know what that 4-tier rating system is? You have to find out. You have to watch Rhythmness to find out. And also, he actually has Random as Fuck. What is Random as Fuck? Random as Fuck is the pool of ratchetness we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and actually have a chuckle. Some videos make you think, some videos make you cry, some videos make you wonder what the fuck. Some videos, like my personal favorite, if you look up at worldstarhiphop.com, because I at least watch it once a day, look up Burger King on Fire. You will not be disappointed. Random as Fuck, BSTs, and Rhythmness can all be found on the calendar on Vaughn's page. Just look up Ada.Weatherspoon on Facebook, and you'll be able to see the calendar on when his podcast will be launching, whether on Facebook Live or on YouTube or on various social media spots. And finally, my other brother from another brother, Trace Brown, DJ King Eddie Wayne on Facebook, DJ King Eddie Wayne on YouTube, has a couple podcasts of his own. He actually has the Bump Down, which is music, culture, knowledge, and numbers, which he goes over what's hot on the charts and what's hot on the underground, upcoming artists that he's working with, and gives his perspective on the recording music industry. He also likes to be able to talk with folks and also likes to play other music. So if you are an artist that wants music played, whether on Trace's Bump Down or Vaughn's Rhythmness, please reach out to Vaughn or Trace on YouTube or Facebook, and they will be able to give you details on how to do it. I do have to sit there and say, as a warning, please send us your best. You want people to recognize you, you want to get spotlight, you want to be able to sit there and say that you get a stamp of approval, then you have to send us your fire. Please don't send us shit, because if we find out it's shit, we're going to tell you it's shit. So if you know it's shit, before you send us this shit, please leave that shit to yourselves. I know that's a lot. But again, send us your fire. Aside from the Bump Down, Trace also follows up with Smoke with Truth. What is the Smoke with Truth? The Smoke with Truth is the unadulterated Check Your Ego at the Door podcast, in which I say about Trace, very, very unorthodox, but very intelligent, and brings a unique perspective to a lot of subject situations. I know me and him from time to time have discussed things, sometimes agreed, sometimes disagreed, but we're always willing to go there because, as Trace says, he wants all the smoke. So, with the Bump Down Smoke Truth podcast, please look up Trace Brown, Trace Brown or King Edward on Facebook, and you'll be able to see when he'll be playing either one of his podcasts. Of course, my other buddy who has a gaming channel, Wingnut Gaming. What is Wingnut Gaming? My buddy Wingnut is a guy that loves first-person shooters. He loves Call of Duty. He loves Fortnite. His choice, not mine. He loves Battlefield. He loves Borderlands. Pretty much, if it's got a beat and it's pretty good, chances are he's probably playing it. But he loves to be social and play with others just to go ahead and have a good time. So if you actually want to, join in, as I sometimes seldom as I do with him on certain games, or just want to watch him make fun of shit as well as crack jokes, then Wingnut Gaming is for you. Just go on to Facebook and like, share, and subscribe. Just find out Wingnut Gaming, and he's easy to find, trust me, because Wingnut is the most unique last name you will ever see on Facebook, and I'm putting up a very high bar with that. But again, Wingnut Gaming, like, share, and subscribe, and go from there. Aside from myself, I do have 2 other podcasts. Later today will be the Off Limits podcast. We are the podcast that goes there. There meaning that we are going to talk about the subjects that don't want to be talked about, because I truly believe that a long time ago we were told that sex, politics, religions are topics that you shouldn't discuss with people to make them uncomfortable. I believe that a lack of those uncomfortable conversations have led to the civil conversations that we have now, which aren't civil. You have people talking over each other, yelling at each other, forcing their opinion down other people's throats, and simply just not liking what they hear simply because of the difference of opinion. What I aim to do with my podcast on Off Limits is not only tackle those off limits subjects, but to bring back civil, modern, progressive conversations, where at the end of it all, you may agree to disagree, or you might like to hear what the other person has to say, but you will be able to understand where they're coming from and leave a little bit more wiser than what you walked into it with. So, Off Limits podcast will be later tonight from 8 to 10 p.m. Also appearing on Facebook Live and YouTube. And also my other podcast, which will also be Sunday night, in which I'll have with Thomas Reed, called Get Bit. What is Get Bit? Get Bit is literally the Blurred's version of everything video games, sci-fi, and TV shows, and books, and anime, and things of that nature. as you probably heard me or Thomas talk multiple times on our other podcast, Pick Up the Sticks, which we also do with our buddy Vaughn, you can see that we both come from areas of just certain subjects I like to talk about. Like for me, it's video games. For Thomas, it's sometimes anime and cosplay, and him trying to defend the Flash, which we're going to talk about this Sunday, and I cannot wait because. Well, you have to watch Sunday to find out. So, Get Bit will be every Sunday from 8:10 p.m. And also, all of us do have YouTube pages. So, if you look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you look up Off Limits Podcast, if you look up Big BZA Podcast, if you look up DJ King A. Wayne, and if you look up Thomas's, which I love Thomas's because it's so unique. And I will say this because sometimes I do speak a little fast. So, Thomas's YouTube page, the number 2, the letter T, the letter B, the letter D, that is 2TBD. A unique YouTube page, but it has to be termed Podcast Fitness page, to where you'll be able to see not only his, but every one of our YouTube pages that have our podcast updated to this date so far, so you can like, share, and subscribe from there. So, with that also being said, guys, before I do this on How the Frack We Got Here, if there is stories that I didn't cover that you want me to cover or to be looked into or to simply be talked about, please let me know, whether at William Buchanan on Facebook or How the Frack We Got Here on YouTube. And about How the Frack We Got Here, the last thing I'll sit there and say is, as I'm trying to, my mouth is watering. That's how you know it's cheat day. When the mouth is watering and you ain't even had food yet. But the last thing I'll say about this on How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. What is staying informed? Staying informed means that you are not taking everything that you see at face value simply because it's presented to you. You are going to do your own research, looking into certifiable sources, and really bringing up the facts, all the facts, and being able to make a decision for yourself and be able to show someone else that you did the same in hopes that they will actually do, and hope that they will keep on spreading and hopefully become forcefully a positive habit. Because an informative community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the Frack We Got Here. So, thank you all guys for watching. If you like what I did, let me know. If you don't like what I did, let me know. Like I said, try to make it better on both sides. But I do appreciate all of you who have watched, who have liked, who have shared, who have started watch parties, things of that nature, word of mouth. I appreciate it all and hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm out. See you guys until the next podcast. Peace.